Hey everyone, welcome into the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. My name is Kyle Yates and I am your host. I'm joined, as always, by Mike Tagliere. You can find both of us on Twitter at KyleYNFL and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, you and I are both in the Midwest here, right? And the weather has been dipping. It's in like the 50s consistently
it's the best
here now.
Weather ever.
I love this weather, man.
Yeah. Oh no, it's fantastic, and it makes it feel like football season because it's when it's warm here in Illinois. It just doesn't feel like it's football season. Now it does. It's like hoodie weather. It's my favorite weather ever. And it just so happens that both the Chicago teams are in the playoffs right now, like both the Cubs and the White Sox. So it's a good day to be a Chicagoan.
For sure. And I've got a good old-fashioned storm going on right outside my window right now. So if you hear some thunder, maybe that'll come through in the podcast. We'll find out. Thunderstrike. All right, guys. Hey, we are joined today by Jacob Gibbs from CBS SportsLine. He can be found on Twitter at JAGibbs_23. You got to listen to what he says because he did pretty well in the draft rankings accuracy competition from last year. Jacob, welcome to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. Big fan of what both of you guys do. Big fan of the podcast. I didn't know you guys were Midwesterners. I am from Kansas City, so I am loving this weather as well.
There we go. Yeah, I'm in Michigan. Tags is in Illinois. So we've got the Midwest covered here. All right, guys. Hey, two things I want to cover right away before we get into our start-sit conversation. We got to talk about this right away because it's on the forefront of fantasy managers' minds. The first thing here is the Titans and Steelers game. Right, Dan and I talked about it on yesterday's podcast that this was a reality, right? That this could very easily be pushed back. We got official word today that the game has been postponed. Now, Tags, what does this mean exactly, and will we still see them play this week?
I do believe we're going to see them play. Apparently, it's if there's no positive tests, they're going to keep it on Monday, and then if there are positives, they're going to push it back a day or something like that. So what you have to do is if you have a tough decision between a borderline player that you were debating on starting during that game, and you have a game that's playing on Thursday night, which I hope you don't, because it's going to be a bad football game. But then you almost have to lean on the side of caution there, or grab another player off the waiver wire that you could potentially swap out later in the week. So that's basically what it's changing for us right now. We haven't heard all the details of this because some people are saying that all of a sudden Yahoo is popping up that it's showing as they have a bye this week. I would assume that these fantasy points are going to count towards week 4. I don't know why they would change that, but it's going to mess up everything, including waiver wires, because you have to push that stuff back almost a full day. Yeah, for sure. And we're flying by the seat of our pants, right? Like all of us are, right? This is unprecedented territory. We could potentially have Tuesday night football for the first time in a very long time. So this is going to be really interesting. So we'll keep you guys updated. This is the reason why you listen to this podcast. So that way you can stay up to date on the latest news. As soon as we get more information, guys, we're going to make sure that you find out about it. So I want to cover the second thing here, though, that was pretty big. Additionally, James White. He returned to practice today for the New England Patriots. This was the concern with adding Rex Burkhead on waivers, was that White could roll up to the facility at any point. So, Jacob, what does this do for the Patriots' backfield moving forward? Because this is just a mess now.
Yeah, it just muddles things even more. I don't think there's any way you can trust Burkhead. Obviously he had the 3 touchdowns, but the big driving force behind his fantasy relevancy was just his volume in the passing game. He's 6th in routes run over the last 2 weeks among running backs. And with James White, I just don't think he's going to retain that role. I do think White is somebody that you might be able to plug in right away in PPR leagues. No team saw more running back targets against them than the Chiefs last year. So I think he is, if I'm starting anyone from New England's backfield, it is James White. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of a gross situation. We've got 4 running backs here that are getting touches, so.
And Damian Harris might be active this week. We don't know if they're actually going to activate him or not, but it's ugly, man.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jacob, that James White is the only one that I want to touch from a fantasy perspective, especially in this game. It's a good matchup. New England's going to have to throw the ball, right? So James White could see some significant volume coming back, but yeah, this just every other running back, Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, J.J. Taylor is probably going to be inactive now. It muddies things super bad. All right, guys, before we get into it, I want to make sure everyone knows about the start-sit assistant that can be found in my playbook. So get this, guys. You can get an instant recommendation on the best lineup for this week. You can view the percentage of experts who would start each player on your roster. You can edit and set your lineup for any league directly from within my playbook. And if you have multiple leagues, you can even view and modify lineups for all of your synced leagues in one place with our multi-league mode and submit your lineups to their respective league hosts with just a couple of clicks. Tags, I'm in so many freaking leagues this year, man. I don't know about you, but like I lean into this multi-league mode way more than I probably even should.
No, there's a lot of features about it that I don't even realize myself, honestly. Like, I work for the company, and like I find new things all the time. Like, I was looking through when I pulled up the ECR for the show today, because we're going to go through that for the start sit advice. It had it highlighted under one league, and it basically like highlights all the players you have, the players that are on waivers that you could potentially pick up that are just part of the rankings. And it's just these little things that are built in. It just gives you that little bit extra that you need every single week, because with so many waiver wire ads, like, we talked about a lot of wide receivers this week. If you're going through the waiver wire and you're torn, you just pull up that My Playbook, right, and it will literally tell you which receivers that the experts are ranking higher than the others. So it's a really, really helpful tool in a lot of different ways.
Our Start Sit Assistant is just one of many helpful features included within our My Playbook tools, guys. MVP and Hall of Fame subscribers also have access to our Autopilot feature, which submits the best possible lineup for each of your fantasy teams. If you do not already have Hall of Fame, we have a special $10 offer for 6 months off of our Hall of Fame package. You can get more details and claim this offer today by going to fantasypros.com/offers. All right, guys, let's get into it. The top starts per position, okay? We're looking at these players. Let's start with running backs here. Outside the top 20, who is a player that we are saying that you should really consider, or let me clarify, sorry, outside the top 20 of our ECR, half PPR ECR, which stands for Expert Consensus Rankings. This takes all the rankings from experts across the industry, puts them into one, and gives an average. So it's saying who the experts are on an average recommending here. So let's look at the outside the top 20. Tags, I'm going to throw it to you first. Who is a top start for you at the running back position outside the top 20?
I mean, I don't know why we are avoiding David Johnson. I see him down at 22 right now. I have him 4 spots higher than ECR. I could make a case to move him up to like 16 among running backs. While Duke Johnson's been out, David Johnson's totaled 28 of the 30 Texans running back touches. Duke Johnson might be expected back this week, but it seems like they're being very cautious with him. Against the Vikings, 72 plays per game. Running backs have totaled 107 touches against them. So even if they do divide it up between Duke Johnson and David Johnson, I'm expecting him to get plenty of opportunity here. And this Minnesota defense is it's leaking fantasy points. And to cover all the wide receivers that they have for the Houston Texans, it's going to force them to drop a lot of guys back in coverage. David Johnson has had a rough couple weeks against Pittsburgh and Baltimore, but listen to what I just said. He played against Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So it's going to be a lot easier time this week. I trusted him in week 1 against Kansas City. I'm trusting him in week 4 against Minnesota.
I mean, yeah, obviously hasn't gotten a ton done on the ground in the past couple matchups. Very, very difficult matchups. So popped off in week 1, looked great, was a consistent contributor. So definitely in this matchup could be someone that returns more than RB22 value. Jacob, let's go to you here. Who is a guy that you're looking at outside the top 20?
Just one thing I wanted to drop real quick on David Johnson. I think Mike brought up a really good point about the plays per game that Minnesota is allowing. The Texans rank 31st in plays per game on the year. They're only averaging 54 plays per game after ranking 12th last year. And I think everybody knows it's a good matchup, but that's something that really is going overlooked a little bit with David Johnson playing every single snap, essentially. The fact that they're going to see probably an increase in snaps by 10 to 15 plays in this game is going to make a huge difference. So I actually have him as my top 10 running back right now. I think that's a really good call.
Nice.
The other guys, Mike Davis and Darrell Henderson, are both obvious ones. I think Yates, you'll probably hit on one of those two. I'm going to mention Jerick McKinnon, actually. I think you hit on this last week, Tags, that Nick Mullins really likes to target running backs. He had an 18% target share to running backs last year. And in week 3, we saw the Niners target running backs on 25% of their targets. The first half splits for McKinnon in that game are what really have me excited. He did come out at the end of the game with a rib injury. I don't know how serious it is, but he played 81% of the offensive snaps in the first half. He handled 11 of their 16 running back touches in the first half, and he was third on the team with a 16% target share in the first half. And so if he's healthy and ready to go here against Philadelphia, a team that does give up receptions to running backs, I think McKinnon could really have another strong game here. I think he's somebody you could be looking at as potentially a top 20 running back, just given the workload that he's seen. I don't know, do you guys think that Jeff Wilson is going to be more involved, or do you buy that it was a first half thing and that he's the real starter if the game is competitive?
I mean, Yates, you tell me what you think here, because I'm a little torn on this one, because I feel like the 49ers are going to be one of two ways. They could say, okay, Jerick McKinnon, there's a reason that nobody ever really used him as a true 3-down workhorse. Even after Adrian Peterson left, they ended up going to Latavius Murray, even when everybody thought it would be McKinnon. And now that they trusted him in that starting role, and it's like he gets they're calling it a rib contusion. So I'm assuming that he's going to be able to play, because basically what that is, it's a bruise. He's got a rib bruise. But if he's not taking part like in full practices as it goes through the week, I would think that Jeff Wilson is going to be more. He's going to be more involved in the game plan early in the game. With that being said, I don't think it's a great matchup for Jeff Wilson on the ground, because the Eagles, Darrell Henderson was the first one who topped 50 rushing yards against them this year. And if you go back to the start of last year, that's a span of 19 games. They've allowed just 3 running backs to rush for more than 66 yards. So the Eagles are not a great matchup, but if you're a pass catcher like McKinnon and even Wilson, he was involved last week, this is the matchup against the Eagles, they're someone that's struggling. Their linebackers are obviously not very good. Now they may be forced to move Jalen Mills back to cornerback because of the injury to Avonte Maddox. So there's like so many moving parts in this defense that I don't think it's a matchup you want to avoid. But I'm struggling trying to figure out which one I would play if I had the choice of both, because they're at home. They're 6-point favorites. The Eagles are reeling right now. They're not scoring points. So I just don't see this game getting out of like a run-heavy game script for them.
Yeah, it's not a great matchup. Tags, you alluded to it. But the difference here is that he is seeing, and Jacob, those are great stats of pointing out his target share. Like, he comes with a safe floor because he's getting the targets out of the backfield. And as far as for fantasy purposes, that's what you want with these running backs. You want a safe floor and someone who is involved in the receiving game. So I think Jerick McKinnon, and this was the ironic part, like, and Tags, you brought it up, like, I was watching the game last week and I saw Jerick McKinnon score. He does his celebration in the back of the end zone, and like I legitimately had the thought, I was like, good for him. Like, I'm just like, good for him, because he's been so injured throughout his career. Like, and then it was so ironic that he gets injured at the end of that game. I was just like, oh, dang it. So moving forward, the injury does play a huge part in that call, Jacob, right? And I think you would even say that. Like, if obviously he doesn't get full practices in, today, tomorrow, even Friday, like obviously you're going to pivot off of this. But from a safe floor perspective, outside the top 20, he's someone that I definitely think you can look at. The other guy that I'm going to point out here, and you alluded to it, Jacob, great call, is Darrell Henderson. Darrell Henderson at RB 23.5 PPR ECR right now. I've got him higher than that. Like, you're going up against the New York Giants run defense that they can't stop anyone. So Darrell Henderson, back-to-back games against Philadelphia and Buffalo, has looked fantastic. Those are two. We just finished talking about Philadelphia as a very, very difficult run defense, and he shredded them. So now he's getting the majority of the workload. Sean McVay has come out and said he is going to be the starter, right? It's not like he's going to get 25 carries in this game, and Malcolm Brown 5. But yet, Malcolm Brown will still be involved. But that's still enough for Darrell Henderson to return value. He has a great chance of finding the end zone in this one against the New York Giants. So I think outside the top 20, I've got to point out Darrell Henderson, because he's someone that you can absolutely plug into your lineup. I'm plugging him in everywhere that I've got him. So Tags, Darrell Henderson, do you think this is a good call here?
100%. I have him as a mid-tier RB2. He was another guy I was going to mention along with David Johnson, but I figured one of you guys would snag Henderson. I do mention that it's kind of like a Ronald Jones situation, where if there's any snag in his play, where if he fumbles or misses a pass protection, whatever, he can obviously lose snaps to someone like Malcolm Brown or even Cam Akers if he's active. If Cam Akers isn't active, I might even move Darrell Henderson up, maybe to RB 16 on the week. I like him quite a bit in this matchup. Opposing running backs have averaged just over 30 touches per game against the Giants. I think they're 13-point favorites in this game. There's really nothing to dislike about Henderson, considering the games that he's coming off and the opponents that they were against.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let's move over to the wide receiver here, and we'll talk about our top start for the wide receivers outside the top 30. Okay, so the top 30 wide receivers. Jacob, I'm going to give this to you first, and then I'll go to Tags, and then I'll wrap it up here. Who is a guy outside the top 30 wide receivers that you're looking at saying fantasy managers should be starting this guy this week?
I think it's Brandin Aiyuk. There are a ton of rookies outside the top 30 that have a chance to take another step forward. We saw a lot of these guys play well in week 3, and Aiyuk was one of them, and he's just continuing to get more involved. Over the last 2 weeks for San Francisco, he has a 73% snap rate and an 18% target rate, which isn't great, but I think we're going to continue to see him get more involved. He did have more targets last week, and with a lot of the injuries that San Francisco is dealing with, I think this sets up really well. And like you guys talked about, Philadelphia is really tough against the run. And so I think we could see Aiyuk get a lot of more attention against a Philadelphia secondary that has struggled dating back to like 2017. So he's somebody that I think he has a really high ceiling, depending on how the injuries shake out in San Francisco, and he's not getting as much attention as he should, because I think he kind of got overshadowed by T. Higgins' big performance, or Justin Jefferson, who I assume will be Yates' guy. So yeah, I'm definitely into Aiyuk this week.
Tags, I talked about it that, he wasn't high on my waiver wire rankings because I was concerned about this matchup with Darius Slay. Where do you land on this? Aiyuk isn't someone that I'm opposed to fantasy managers starting this week, but he's not necessarily someone that I am personally saying, hey, go start this guy. So where do you land? Do you fall in between?
Yeah, I'm a little bit. I would probably want to fade him just because there's a chance that Darius Slay shadows him. There's a chance because Kendrick Bourne, I feel like he's just a forgotten man that nobody really ever wants to, assign someone to him. And I've mentioned the problems that they're having in their secondary right now. So if Darius Slay doesn't shadow at all and Brandon Aiyuk gets stuck against, maybe they move Jalen Mills back down to cornerback. If he gets matched up with Jalen Mills, he's going to win that matchup because Jalen Mills is terrible. So there's definitely a scenario that I can see him panning out this week, but he's more of like a risk-reward wide receiver 4 for me.
Okay. All right, Tags, let's go back to you here. Who is a guy that you're looking at for a top start at the wide receiver position outside the top 30?
I say start Brandin Cooks as a wide receiver 3 this week.
Good call.
I understand that he's gotten off to a slow start with Houston, but remember that it was a new team. This was basically his preseason. He dealt with an injury, and then week 1 he plays the team that has allowed the fewest yards to wide receivers in both 2019 and 2020. Nobody realizes that the Chiefs are actually really, really good against wide receivers. They played Baltimore, which, well, it's Baltimore, and then they played Pittsburgh. So it's like the start to his schedule was absolutely brutal. He's gotten healthier. He's starting to get more targets, and now he's going to see a mixture of rookies Jeff Gladney and Cameron Dantzler. Those two have combined to allow 19 of 25 passing for 277 yards and 2 touchdowns in their coverage. This is a week where Houston is like a get-right game. I mean, they still have not given up on the season. Clearly, they're talking about bringing in Earl Thomas when they're 0-3, which it really makes no sense. It made no sense why they traded away DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson. But
yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
It's all relative, though, right? Is where this team needs a get-right game. They need a feel-good game. Minnesota is the team to provide that. Again, with those 72 plays against, there's going to be plenty of targets to go around here. I'm anticipating Brandin Cooks to see at least 6 to 8 targets in this game, and that's more than enough against this Minnesota secondary.
You said it. You said get right game. And that's exactly what I was going to say for Brandin Cooks, Will Fuller, Deshaun Watson. Like, this is absolutely a get right game. And I can't even remember what game I was watching last week where the announcers were talking about Houston, and they were like, who made this, who made the start to the schedule for Houston, and why do they hate Houston? Because it is a absolutely brutal schedule. And so looking at now Brandin Cooks, yes, he's been dealing with an injury. He was dealing with a quad injury up into the game last week, so he hasn't been fully healthy either. But I think, like you said, Tags, 6 to 8 targets is in the realm of possibilities. Is probably the most likely scenario. And if that's the case, then you plug him in as a wide receiver 3 with upside. So I like the call there. Guys, I'm going to go with a player in a matchup that, even if Davante Adams plays, I'm saying that you need to be rolling out Allen Lazard. And the reason why is because it's against Atlanta. Tags, you brought up on Twitter, it was fantastic. You mentioned that the over-under for this game is what, 58 points?
58, yeah, 58 right now.
That's absurd. That's ridiculous. And I think it can easily hit the over. Like, you're looking at these two offenses and the amount of points that they have pulled up. If you could pull up that tweet, Tags, that would be great. Looking at the amount of points that these two teams in their separate games have put up as far as the overall accumulative score is insane. And so in this instance, I want the receiving options. Even if Davante Adams comes back and continues to see 30% of the targets, whatever, Allen Lazard is still going to be a fine option that you can plug in as a wide receiver 3. He's going to see 4 to 6 targets. He most likely will fall into the end zone because Aaron Rodgers is going to have to throw in this one. I like the receiving options in this game. So I'm saying, Allen Lazard, you need to be looking at him even if Davante Adams comes back.
Yeah, it's a smash spot for the Packers offense. The question is, do they keep their foot on the throttle? And that tweet, by the way, was the Packers games so far have netted 77, 63, and 67 points. The Falcons games have netted 63, 79, and 56 points. This is ridiculous. So when I saw a 58-point total, I'm like, oh, you should smash the under. And I was like, wait a minute. But you look at it, and even
thought.
Grady Jarrett, like the interior defensive tackle for the Falcons, he might not play this week. Tack McKinley, he might not play this week. They're down two of their starting cornerbacks, including the slot cornerback Darqueze Dennard, who's supposed to be covering Allen Lazard.
Yep.
So there's a lot of problems with this defense, and it's kind of one of those games where it's like they could just pick and choose their battles. And clearly, Allen Lazard is growing, his role is growing, the confidence is growing, and coming off that game against the Saints, massive game, and an important game for them. Allen Lazard, I definitely like him a lot more than most this week.
For sure. All right, let's pivot over to the quarterback position, guys. I want to keep it moving. Jacob, I'm going to throw it to you first here because it's been a while since you've talked. So top starts per position at the quarterback. We're looking outside the top 12 here. So who is someone at the quarterback position outside the top 12 that you're saying fantasy managers should be considering starting this week?
I think it's got to be Fitzmagic, right? I mean, you guys have talked about some of the high over-unders, and one of the highest on the slate is the Seahawks versus the Dolphins. And Seattle's secondary, like many teams, is dealing with a lot of injuries right now. And Miami should be pretty pass-heavy. I would expect them to be playing from behind. They're actually only 6.5 point underdogs, which surprised me. But I think we're going to see him drop back much more than we saw in Week 3. He's got Devontae Parker getting healthy finally. And the Seahawks are allowing 440 passing yards per game, which is obviously just...
That's insane.
It's insane, yeah. And it's mostly a product of them getting ahead and people having to go to this, air raid attack. But I think that's probably what we're going to see from Miami. I'm just curious, like, how high do you think is too high to have Fitzpatrick ranked this week?
Well, I'll jump in here because this was my guy too. I was going to talk about Fitzmagic.
It was same with mine.
Okay, perfect. So we're all in agreement. And I tweeted this out earlier today. You mentioned the 400 passing yards, which is absurd. The Seattle Seahawks are currently allowing 47.9 points on average to opposing wideouts this season. So, like, looking at Devontae Parker, the receiving options, I mean, even Preston Williams can be rolled out as a flex option this week. If you're giving up, on average, 47.9 points on average. So, as far as your question, Jacob, of how high is too high, he would probably be, the moment that I would be like starting to get concerned with my ranking would be probably around like 10, because there are some really, really good options this week too, that as far as above him in the quarterback, ranks that have really good matchups. So I don't know if I would necessarily feel comfortable going much higher than 10, but Tags, where do you land on this?
Yeah, I have him right now at QB 11. There's a lot of good quarterbacks to play. I really thought, like, when I researched this game, it was one of the first ones I did, and I was like, oh, Fitzpatrick is going to be like a top 8 quarterback for me. And then I start realizing all the good matchups across the league. Right. And some are safer than Fitzpatrick because he does tend to have some games where he just, like, totally de-gaffs it and it doesn't work out. But this matchup is just so damn good. The Seahawks, they might not even have Jamal Adams this week. And they weren't good with Jamal Adams. They're not generating any pressure, which should give Fitzpatrick time. They can't stop any wide receivers. They can't stop tight ends if they don't have Jamal Adams. So Fitzpatrick he's such a good start. And by the way, if you go back to week 7 of last year, Ryan Fitzpatrick has scored the 4th most fantasy points among quarterbacks. Only Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, and Josh Allen have outscored him. It's kind of remarkable, to be honest with you. And in this matchup where, I mean, you really don't think that those points are going to come from Jordan Howard, do you?
Watch this be a Jordan Howard 3-touchdown game for 3 yards on the ground. No, with looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick, it's crazy too because like he is on the waiver wire. Like this morning, I didn't put in waiver claims, and in one league I was terrible. I was rolling out Mitch Trubisky as my streaming option. And then I realized that I forgot to put in a waiver claim, and I, dropped Trubisky, and Fitzpatrick was sitting there on the waiver wire in this 14-team league. I was like, perfect. I'm going to pick him up. In my dynasty league, I have Carson Wentz and Ryan Tannehill. Don't like their matchups this week. I picked up Ryan Fitzpatrick off the waiver wire in a 1 QB dynasty league. He's available. And so he's going to be this guy that you can confidently roll in. I've got him at 13 now. And that's, again, just looking at, there are some really, really good matchups. So Jacob, love the call there with Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think that is unanimous that we are all saying you have to start him this week. Let's look at the tight end position here, guys. Tags, a tight end outside the top 12. Who's the guy that you want to bring up?
You know what? I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm just going to say that Gronk is someone that I think
you took my guy.
Might be back on the radar. It seemed like he turned a corner in week 3. He looked better. He actually should have had a touchdown. He played a season-high 63 snaps. Brady just overthrew him he had nobody within 5 yards of him, and he just overthrew it. It should have been, I think it was a 21-yard touchdown. And then when you look at the matchup that he has this week, I just feel like against the Chargers, they're a team that clearly they shut down wide receivers. I know they just lost Chris Harris Jr., but you figure that Casey Hayward they're going to find a way to get him to cover Mike Evans, even if Evans probably goes into the slot. So they've lost him. They've lost Chris Harris. They've lost Derwin James, and all of a sudden they're just lacking options. And it's not like they're going to take Hayward and say, hey, you're going to cover Rob Gronkowski. No one's going to do that to a tight end. And tight ends have actually performed against the Chargers this week because of those factors. So I think Rob Gronkowski is someone that you could actually play this week.
I think with Gronk, obviously, you heard me exclaim that this was my guy too. So I think the reasoning here too, and the reason why I like it, is that Chris Godwin is out this game, most likely out for next week too. And so this opens up a lot of targets in this offense. Again, we talked about the corner matchup. It's not great for Mike Evans. I still think he's going to see a ton of targets, but the targets have to go somewhere. And so looking at Gronk, if Godwin was playing in this game, I would be a little bit more hesitant. He'd be somewhere around like my tight end, let's say 20. But right now he's tight end 27 in half PPR ECR, guys. Like the experts are split on what to do with Gronk. I think that you can roll him out there if you are desperate at the position. Let's say that you have an Evan Engram, and you're I don't want to roster Evan Engram anymore, is what you're saying. I think you can drop Engram and pick up Rob Gronkowski and plug him in this matchup. I think you can absolutely get away with that. Jacob, let's go to you here. Who is a guy for the tight end that you're saying that you can pick up and start?
Yeah, so I would actually go with Dalton Schultz, not diving quite as deep as you guys here. I think he's the tight end 15 on consensus. Played almost 70% of the snaps and has a 16% target share over the last 2 weeks. He's actually leading the team in red zone targets, for whatever that's worth, on the year. And the Browns have not been very good against tight ends. This game is expected to be a shootout. The tight ends that have faced them, Logan Thomas did not play well last week, but before that, the Bengals tight ends were targeted 15 times against the Browns and had almost 100 yards, and then Mark Andrews obviously had 2 scores against them in week 1. So I don't think he's a super high ceiling pick here, but just given the amount of routes he's running right now and the amount of points that are supposed to be scored in this game, I think Schultz is somebody you can plug in, like you said, if you are just kind of getting sick of the Evan Engram experience and you want somebody that should get you some points in a PPR league. I like Schultz's outlook in this matchup.
It's actually a really good point, and that's something that I hadn't considered, looking at the Browns linebacking core and the guys who would be guarding Dalton Schultz. It's not great. So absolutely. And again, bringing up the Bengals tight ends, if the Bengals tight ends can go off against your defense here, and then they see one target the next week, I think that you're susceptible. So yeah, I don't hate that call. Dalton Schultz there, I think he definitely needs to be someone that I'm looking at moving up my rankings. I have him at tight end 17 right now. Based on your argument, Jacob, I can definitely see moving him up. All right, guys, let's move over to the top sits. Okay, so now we're going to be we'll go back to running backs here, and we're going to look at these guys within the top 20 at the running back position that we're saying, hey, if you can, it might be wise to bench this player or to avoid or just adjust your expectations. Okay, so let's go to tags here first. Who is a running back within the top 20 that you're saying, I'm not crazy about this week?
I could pick or choose. Do one of you have Todd Gurley or David Montgomery?
I have Gurley, yeah.
All right, so I'll just do Montgomery then. I know David Montgomery is going to walk into a lot more touches with Tariq Cohen out for the year, but it's not a matchup to target. The Indianapolis Colts have allowed one 100-yard rusher against them through 35 games under Matt Eberflus and Frank Reich. So they clearly don't allow big rushing performances. That defensive line is really good. They're getting a lot of pressure on quarterbacks, and on top of that, they've allowed I think it's 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns since the start of last year. So they're not a team they're basically a team you can't run the ball against, and you're not going to score many rushing touchdowns against. David Montgomery is not a guy that they've used heavily in the passing game. And on top of that, he is actually sharing carries with Cordarrelle Patterson for whatever reason. So I'm not a big fan of Montgomery this week. I mean, he's a guy that's probably going to get, I'll say 15 plus touches. So you're going to start him in most leagues just because he's guaranteed volume. But I have him as like a low end RB2, high end RB3 this week.
I think the volume is what is giving me confidence to rank him at 18, which is right in line with ECR. So I've been on Montgomery all off season, all season. So like I'm willing to buy into the majority of the workload, the increased, with Nick Foles too, like we have to talk about that. He's going to take what's available to him. He's going to dump it down, which means that we could see some increased targets for David Montgomery. The matchup is not great. I completely agree with you, Tags. That stat that you threw out scares the crap out of me. But David Montgomery hasn't exactly been someone that you can say is hitting over 100 yards on the ground consistently, but he's still been somewhat producing. He's still been a somewhat safe option for you as an RB2. And when you're looking at... Go ahead.
So here's a question for you, though, Yates. Would you start Darrell Henderson over David Montgomery?
Where do I have... Yeah, well, I have him at 17 and 18 in my rankings.
I would start Henderson. Yeah.
I have Henderson over Montgomery, but that's close. So I'll play the matchup game there, and I think that Henderson... against the Giants is a better matchup. So I totally get that call. Let's go to you, Jacob. Who is a running back that you're saying that you might want to avoid if you can?
It's Todd Gurley, and I just want to bring him up because I think people might be into him just because of a projected shootout here and what they saw Alvin Kamara do to Green Bay last week. But I think you guys have already hit on a few of these guys, whether it's Darrell Henderson or Mike Davis, even guys like McKinnon potentially, or even Myles Gaskin. I think you can consider starting over Gurley. And it's really just about the total lack of involvement in the passing game. We saw Gurley get 3 targets in the first week, and he did drop one of those after leading all running backs in drop rate last year. And since then, he's just been a complete non-factor. He has 1 target over the last 2 games, and he's actually 27th in routes run among running backs over the last 2 games, which is kind of crazy considering how much Atlanta passes the ball. Obviously, we saw Brian Hill with a nice touchdown run last week, and he's starting to take more and more work from Gurley. And so in a game that Atlanta is projected to be playing from behind and likely going to be passing a lot, I just don't have much interest in Gurley. There's always a chance that he finds the end zone once or twice, but I don't know. He's really projecting as a boom-bust option at this point, and I think there are a lot of guys with much more guaranteed volume that I'd rather start.
That's fair. I think Gurley moving forward is always going to land in my rankings probably at like RB23, RB24. Like, just because it's cutting the gap there of the potential range of outcomes. This guy who could find the end zone, again, and we talked about this matchup, like crazy over-under. I think there's going to be points put up on the board, but do we start to see Brian Hill be more of a factor? Which we have as the season's gone on. He's been more and more involved. And so do we see Todd Gurley's workload decline? If he doesn't find the end zone, you're not going to be super happy that you started him. I mean, last week, what was it? 14 times for 80 yards, like 14 carries for 80 yards. It's a fine stat, but he scored. But only 2 targets last week, 1 reception for 2 yards. Like, no, thank you. So he's like this low-end RB2, doesn't really have much upside. He's kind of in that same range of a David Johnson for me on a week-to-week basis. So, Tags, Todd Gurley here, is this someone that you're like officially concerned about moving forward?
I am concerned about him. I think that you should sell him right now. If you can like get someone to buy the fact that maybe they don't watch all the games, they just watch Red Zone or something like that. I would sell Todd Gurley. If you can get someone like Joe Mixon in return, I would do that deal now. Because people they're panicking on Mixon. Same thing with Kenyon Drake. I would do the trade Gurley now for them if you can. But Gurley, he actually has run the most pass routes of this backfield, 47 to Brian Hill's 35, Ito Smith 29. But he's not getting the targets. Matt Ryan's not checking down a whole lot, and I don't think he has to against this Packers team. No running back has totaled more than 12 carries against the Packers thus far. It's basically because of the game script and what you're projecting in this one. You want to say, hey, whoever's going to get the pass down work is going to be the most valuable here. And it is still Gurley, but it feels gross. The only reason I worry about fading him is because he does play in the Falcons offense that's projected to score like 30 points in this game.
Right.
And that it's like he can fall into the end zone twice, and then you're looking at your roster and you're like, ugh, I started someone like David Montgomery over him where he rushes for 50 yards and catches, 2 passes for 12 yards. So that's the reason it's always tough to fade Gurley. So I have him at RB21, but I absolutely do think that there's serious bust risk here if he does not score a touchdown.
Good points. The guy that I'm going to bring up is Melvin Gordon at RB17 and half PPR ECR right now. This game, I just want to avoid if I can. Just like there, maybe Noah Fant, maybe Jerry Jeudy as a flex option, Melvin Gordon as a low-end RB2, maybe high-end RB3. We're not even talking about the fact that Philip Lindsay started to practice again. I don't think he's going to come back for this game on a short week, maybe if it was Sunday, but this offense with Brett Rippon as your starting quarterback now, how many scoring opportunities is Melvin Gordon going to be put into against a fairly good Jets run defense? So it's like, I don't think that there's a ceiling here for Melvin Gordon, and for him to be ranked at 17 is saying confidently start him, and I'm just not there. I think that you can put him in as a low-end RB2, high-end RB3, and that's kind of where you need to expect, because, again, I just don't expect this offense to be able to move the ball much. And Gordon makes his fantasy value comes from his scoring opportunities. So I'm not super excited about Melvin Gordon. I think that if you can, you should be looking to sit him. Let's move over to the wide receivers, guys. Tags, we'll go to you first. Who is a wide receiver within the top 30 that you're saying avoid if you can?
I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is I'm worried about him that there's an injury that we don't know about. And there was a hit that he took last week. It was right on his knee, and it did not look good. And he came out of the game for a series or two, and then all of a sudden we see Cedric Wilson playing a lot more snaps, and it's like, what's going on here? It's just one of those things where when I see him ranked, like the EC consensus is like 22 among wide receivers. That's crazy. I have him down around like 36. I'm like playing this one cautiously, and he's not someone like, let's not pretend that he's presenting such a ceiling every single week that you have to play him. He's catching a bunch of targets over the middle of the field. He's benefiting from Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup being on the perimeter. That's fine. But again, if he's not going to be playing all the snaps, it's basically what I want you to do is pay attention to the injury reports as the week goes on. Pay attention to our rankings, because I will move him up if he's practicing in full and we hear nothing different about it. But I just don't feel great about CeeDee Lamb this week after just seeing him basically come off the field for, I think it was over 33% of the snaps last week.
You took my guy, Tags. I had him at 37 this week among our wide receivers.
Yeah.
And I've got him at 30, guys. So I'm in agreement with you here. 22 seems like his ceiling. And that's with him getting a touchdown and like Michael Gallup not getting one, right? Like that is the kind of scenario that would allow him to get to 22. Now, the thing working in his favor is that he is lining up against Tavier Thomas in this one, who Tyler Boyd went for 7 receptions for 72 yards in week 2. I think that's a beatable matchup. But yet, at the same time, to have him ranked at 22 is very aggressive, in my opinion. So I've got him at 30. Tags, you said at 36, and then Jacob at 37, correct? Yeah, so this is a guy, low-end wide receiver 3, this guy that you should still be starting, I think. And again, like you said, Tags, this is someone that, again, from a injury perspective, you definitely do need to pay attention to. But what you're saying, Tags, is like adjust your expectations. Do not expect someone as far as 22.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I would also say that if for whatever reason that we hear that Denzel Ward is going to play, I would actually upgrade Denzel or CeeDee Lamb's ranking. Just because right now I'm not projecting Denzel Ward to play, and that means Amari Cooper is going to go bananas. So if Ward plays, it's going to mean Amari's got a much tougher matchup on that side of the field when he's over there, which would obviously, the matchup for CeeDee Lamb in the slot is not bad against Cleveland. It's really not. It's just a matter of like his health right now.
Sure. Okay, Jacob, did we go to you here for a guy that you're looking at? You said it was CeeDee Lamb.
It was going to be CeeDee Lamb, but I can do Marquise Brown. And this is another kind of risk-reward guy like Gurley, where he could definitely burn me on this pick. But I just think they're going to be, and they have a huge implied total. So if he does happen to get their early touchdowns, it's a matchup he could. But I think more likely than not, if we simulated this 100 times, you're going to be disappointed with the outcome from Marquise Brown. Huge spread in this one, and we saw in the first 2 weeks when Baltimore was playing with huge leads, Marquise Brown played 58% Baltimore threw 58% of the time in the first half and just 33% of the time in the second half. And we saw Hollywood Brown be much, much less involved in the second half of both those games. He had 9 catches on 10 targets for 138 yards in the first half and just 1 catch on 2 targets for 5 yards in the second half. And we've seen them just kind of shift into the, Gus Edwards just running out the clock mode in the second half of these blowouts, and that definitely could be the case against Washington. On the flip side, like they are going to be missing Chase Young, and so Lamar might have time to hit Hollywood deep a couple times here. But barring that, I think that this is going to be a disappointing game for Hollywood Brown owners. And there's a lot of receivers in this. We've mentioned Allen Lazard and people like that. I think they're a much safer start than Marquise Brown this week.
I think that's a great call. I have been more optimistic in buying in on Marquise Brown over the past 2 weeks, and he's burned me. right? Because the offense hasn't been there. The production hasn't been there. That's a great stats as far as the first half and second half split. So Marquise Brown, I've got at wide receiver 28 on the week right now. He's still someone that I think you can roll in as a wide receiver 3 and deal with the potential range of outcomes, because he could absolutely hit one long pass and take it to the house, or he could go and do what he did last week, which is just not be super involved. And Lamar could miss him, which he did. Brown would have had a wide open touchdown. He would have taken that pass in for a touchdown, but Jackson underthrew him in that Monday Night Football game.
Yeah,
So
I'm on the exact same page. I had him really high last week, and because of these splits, because I thought it was going to be a competitive game, and it was super disappointing. And I also have him at wide receiver 28 this week.
Perfect. The guy I'm going to bring up is a huge shocker to anyone who has listened. It's T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton at the wide receiver 27 spot in half PPR ACR. Shocker. No, I mean, T.Y. Hilton is a wide receiver 71 on the season through 3 weeks. And so looking at T.Y., yes, he has a increased opportunity in front of him. And if he were going up against a better matchup, it would be one that I would be more willing to buy into T.Y. Hilton at his current ranking of 27. I would be saying, yeah, I think you can get away with rolling in T.Y. Hilton as a wide receiver 3. However, looking at this matchup against Chicago and Phillip Rivers, I mean, Jonathan Taylor should be able to get some work done on the ground. Like, I don't have him as high as the industry. I think industry has him at like running back 7 on the week. Like, I'm not buying in that high on Jonathan Taylor this week against the Bears defense, but looking at T.Y. Hilton and Zach Pascal as your wide receivers with Phillip Rivers, who has not looked good throughout the first couple weeks of the season, and this Bears pass rush and defense, I just don't think the passing game is going to be able to get much done in this one. So you're relying on T.Y. Hilton to score a touchdown, which he hasn't done up to this point of the season, to hit that wide receiver 27 mark. So I've got T.Y. at 40 this week, so it's higher than what I've had him previously, Tags. But looking at Hilton, like, I just don't think that he's someone that I'm willing to buy into at wide receiver 27.
I am with you this week. I have him at 37. I don't think it's a good matchup at all. And by the way, Yates, you could use this in a tweet if you want. Tim Patrick has more fantasy points than T.Y. Hilton.
Tags. I was literally going to bring up in an argument against T.Y. Hilton, but I didn't want to feel like I was piling on, that Tim Patrick has more fantasy points on the season than T.Y. Hilton. That is ridiculous. We talk way too much.
And that's before the Thursday night game too.
Yeah.
So yeah. Patrick is only going to go up with Brett Rippon.
There are some shocking names on the list as far as fantasy points above T.Y. Hilton on the season. Tags, that is crazy. We talk way too much.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, those are the wide receivers. Let's move over to the quarterback position. Again, we talked about it. There are some really, really good matchups this week for the guys who are considered in the top 12. So it was difficult for me to look at someone in this list. Tags, I'll go to you first. Was there someone that you identified that was like, I really just want to sit this guy if I can?
Evan Engram, maybe.
I said quarterback.
Oh, quarterback. Sorry, I thought this. Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, that was my name too.
That was my go too.
So, okay. And if you go back to last year, the Saints defense started out the exact same way. Like, they were terrible to begin the year, and you kind of wondered, you're like, okay, maybe this team isn't built to win a Super Bowl. And then it was literally, I think it was week 4 was the turning point. I wrote this game up, and it was basically in week 4, they played Dak Prescott, and he was like considered chalk in DFS. He ended up with 223 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. With Marshawn Lattimore matching up with Kenny Galladay, that's a tough matchup for him. Marvin Jones hasn't been doing anything. TJ Hawkinson's the guy who's got to get it done, but at the same time, Malcolm Jenkins might be settling in, whatever the case may be. They've struggled against tight ends like really, really bad, but Malcolm Jenkins is one of the best cover safeties in the game, so I don't know what's happening there. But yeah, Matthew Stafford, I am not too excited about playing him this week.
So it sounds like that was our guy for across the board. So let's just throw out our rankings here of Matthew Stafford. I have him at 18 right now. Where do you guys have him?
16.
I've got him at 15.
Okay, perfect. So all in the same range. And again, flip a coin with any of these guys. They're kind of in the same tier. So we're all in that same range of saying sit Matthew Stafford if you can.
Start Ryan Fitzpatrick over him.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's just that there's guys like Fitzpatrick and Joe Burrow and Ben Roethlisberger that I would just rather start those guys. There's so many quarterbacks with good matchups this week.
Exactly.
I'm not believing that the Saints defense is done yet. I don't know. I'm not going to Stafford this week.
Okay, perfect. So let's go over to tight ends here, guys, for our top sits. Tags, you took the guy that I was going to bring up. So it sounds, Evan Engram was your answer there. Is that, Jacob, is that the same for you?
You guys hate Evan Engram so much.
I actually was the one who liked him, and then I was like, I always follow the targets at tight end. But seriously, this has been bad. Like he just hasn't been very good at football so far. Like he just does not look good. And again, I usually chase targets at tight end, and it's one of those positions where there's so much volatility. You tend to follow the targets, but he's just been so bad. I don't know.
I keep following the targets as well, following the routes run, hoping for a bounce back, and it is not working out. My guy would actually be Tyler Higbee, and so we're again going with kind of a boom-bust, touchdown-dependent guy that might make me look dumb here. But as you guys hit on with Darrell Henderson, the Rams really want to run, and they're 13-point favorites. On the year, they're 30th in situation-neutral pass rate, which means like when the score is within 6 points either way, they're passing at the 30th rate. They really want to run the ball, and Higbee is blocking a lot more. I don't know if people realize this because he's been finding the end zone. He ran just 16 routes on 50 snaps last week, and he was targeted just 3 times. On the year, he ranks 30th among tight ends in routes run and is 22nd in targets. He's gotten by with like touchdowns alone, and it's not like he's playing some starring role in the red zone. It's not like, Gronk in, 2016 or something. Like, he's seen just 3 red zone targets all year. 3, and he's scored a touchdown on all 3 of them. There are 30 tight ends who have been, had seen that type of red zone usage. I don't know. Maybe he'll just keep scoring a touchdown every single time he gets thrown to in the red zone, and I'll feel bad about this one, but I have him at tight end 9, and I think he's ranked as the tight end 4. You say you have him at 9 too?
I have him right there. I was going to say I'm lower on him. It's tough to sit him because like you look at the options around him and you're kind of like, do I really want to start Noah Fant with Brett Rippon over someone like Tyler Higbee? But you're right. Those the pass routes have declined every week, 22, 17, and then 16 last week. So that's clearly not enough, especially in a game that the Rams fell behind big time. So it's like you wonder, okay, is Sean McVay doing his thing? And that's what he's always done, right? Sean McVay evolves. He doesn't just stick with the same exact offense that he ran the year before. So we got to follow this and say that there is some risk with Tyler Higbee moving forward.
So I'm going to be honest, Jacob. I tuned out because halfway through your argument, because you said that the Rams were 13-point favorites, and I was like, there's no way that that's right. Like, there's no way. And then I looked it up.
13.5, isn't it?
That is absurd.
Yeah.
They're 13-point favorites. Oh, my goodness. I don't know how I didn't know that, but holy crap. 13.
Yeah, you said earlier, you're like, Darrell Henderson probably won't get 20 carries. It's like, he might get 20 carries because he might run 40 times this weekend.
Oh, my word. I had no idea. And the money is still heavily on the Rams with that line. That is insane. I think they can hit it, though. I don't doubt it, but 13 is very aggressive. That's insane. Okay, I'm back on track here, guys. Evan Engram was going to be my answer here, just because, again, we haven't seen anything from Engram up to this point of the season to indicate that he can be a top 12 or to be ranked as a top 12 guy, and this offense is just terrible. And it's a tough matchup for him too. I'm not super crazy about Evan Engram this week. Okay, guys, let's go to, I'm just going to throw out some players here, and we'll start at the quarterback position, and I will start at the running back, excuse me. So I'm just going to throw, and we'll fly through these tags. I'm going to give you some names here, and you tell me which one out of this list that you would prefer to start. Okay, so we've got Devin Singletary. These guys are all back-to-back in half PPR ECR, okay? So Devin Singletary, David Montgomery, Melvin Gordon, and Todd Gurley. Devin Singletary at Las Vegas, David Montgomery, Indianapolis, Melvin Gordon at the Jets, Todd Gurley at Green Bay. Out of that list, who would you be willing to play?
I'll take Gordon. He's going to get 18-plus touches in that game. I know you don't like him very much, but I think it's just such a high floor with him. He doesn't share that workload. Even if Philip Lindsay comes back, he's going to be limited. All the goal line work. There's going to be some points scored in that game. It's not going to be exciting, but I'll take Melvin Gordon.
Okay. And Devin Singletary, too, important to keep in context that Zach Moss did return to practice. So, okay, let's, Jacob, at the running back position, David Johnson, Mike Davis, Kareem Hunt, or Darrell Henderson. David Johnson against Minnesota, of course, Mike Davis at Arizona, Kareem Hunt at Dallas, and Darrell Henderson at New York. Who out of that group are you looking at starting this week?
I would go with David Johnson, but that is with the contingency that Duke, I am assuming, is going to sit. It didn't sound like he was particularly close to playing. If Duke plays, I think he'll probably take 25-30% of the snaps, which would make it a lot closer between David Johnson and Mike Davis. But right now, I actually have David Johnson ranked as running back 11, so he's not even close to somebody like Kareem Hunt for me. But that's who I would go with.
By the way, that's news if you guys missed it. Kareem Hunt missed practice today. He's day to day. They're calling him.
Yep. Good call. All right, Tags, let's move to the wide receiver position. Devontae Parker against Seattle. Michael Gallup against Cleveland.
No, you don't even need to tell me the rest of them.
I figured it was Devontae Parker, right? How high do you have Devontae Parker ranked on the week?
14.
Okay.
Wow.
That's around where I've got him too. I really like him this week. Let's go to you, Jacob. Julian Edelman at Kansas City. Tyler Boyd at Jacksonville, versus Jacksonville, excuse me. Will Fuller versus Minnesota. And T.Y. Hilton at Chicago. Out of that group, who are you playing?
Definitely is going to be Will Fuller for me. I just really love the matchup. We've talked at length already about the get right spot here for Houston. I have Will Fuller all the way up at wide receiver 19 this week.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. So let's go to quarterback. Tags. I'll throw this to you. Matt Ryan at Green Bay. Joe Burrow versus Jacksonville. Matthew Stafford versus New Orleans. We talked about him. But then Ben Roethlisberger at Tennessee, assuming that this game happens in week 4, right? So out of that list, Matt Ryan, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Ben Roethlisberger, who are you playing?
I have Matt Ryan, and honestly, guys, I would be torn on who to start. I think I might go with Matt Ryan over Aaron Rodgers in the rankings this week because Aaron Jones can do whatever Aaron Jones does, right? And Matt Ryan has Todd Gurley.
Yep.
He's going to throw the ball 40, 45 times in a game that has an over-under of 58 points. As long as Julio Jones is expected back, I think Matt Ryan is a locked-in play.
All right, Jacob, for you at the tight end position, okay? So let's go with Jonnu Smith versus Pittsburgh. Again, assuming that this game does happen in week 4. TJ Hawkinson versus New Orleans. Noah Fant at the Jets. And then Hayden Hurst at Green Bay. Jonnu Smith, TJ Hawkinson, Noah Fant, and Hayden Hurst. Who are you starting?
I've got Fant first out of this group. And I want to ask you guys real quickly, though, where are you at on Hayden Hurst? Because I think you were both high on him like I was this year, and I was super, super bummed by his usage last week without Julio or Russell Gage, because I have him the lowest out of that group.
I think their game plan got screwed up.
Yeah.
I do. I know they were going through the week like they were going to have Julio, and then turned in, we don't have him. And then Gage gets knocked out early, and it's like they don't know where to go. Hurst was actually visibly upset on the field at one point. I don't know if he was yelling at Matt Ryan or what, but that dude plays with a lot of emotion. Fortunately, he scored a touchdown. I have him at 12 this week. I actually might move him over Noah Fant, considering this whole Brett Rippon situation. Fant has played really well, getting a high target share, but I just don't know how much I want to trust that offense.
Yeah, I've got him at 8, and it's above TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant at 9 and 10, respectively. And it's mostly because of the matchup, and assuming points are going to go up in this one. TJ Hawkinson against New Orleans, Noah Fant against the Jets. Just not super excited about either of those, but Hayden Hurst still at 8 for me. So I'm still buying in. I'm still starting him. All right, guys, let's go just lightning round here as our start of the week. So, again, we talked about these guys in different positions, but let's just say our planting the flag on this player. Who is our absolute guaranteed locked and loaded start of the week? Tags, who is it for you?
Devontae Parker. That's why when you mentioned his name, I was like, you don't even need to go any further. Devontae Parker.
Great matchup for him. Should put points up on the board. Love the call. Jacob, what about for you? Start of the week.
I was going to go with Will Fuller, but I've already talked about him, so I'll go with Mike Davis. I really love the spot here against Arizona. I think they're going to keep checking down to him at a high rate. The Cardinals definitely give up a lot of catches to opposing running backs. So I think Mike Davis is somebody you can start in PPR leagues for sure.
We talked about him. For me, it's Darrell Henderson, and that just even is more influenced by the 13-point favorite. So looking at that, I'm buying into that, buying into Darrell Henderson as a whole. Even if Cam Akers plays, I don't expect him to see a ton of work. This is Darrell Henderson's backfield moving forward. I think against this defense, you can easily plug him in and get solid production. Let's go to the sit of the week. Okay, we talked about some of these guys, so it might be the same one, but Tags, sit of the week. Who is it for you?
T.Y. Hilton.
Good boy. Jacob, what about for you? Jacob, what about for you?
It's Tyler Higbee, and I don't know. It's tough because it's a onesie position, so you might not want to, do I drop? You don't drop Tyler Higbee, obviously, but do I drop somebody else to pick up a tight end to start over Higbee? But in a league where you have any other option, maybe you have Jonnu Smith or TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant, Hunter Henry, all those guys, Mike Gesicki, I prefer all of them over Tyler Higbee this week.
Sure, and then for me, it is T.Y. Hilton, too. I talked about him earlier. I just, every week, sit. So, okay, guys, let's wrap this up here. We're coming up on the end, but we have to talk about this game. Thursday Night Football preview. A barn burner between Brett Rippon and the Denver Broncos offense and Sam Darnold and the New York Jets offense. Tags, I'm going to kick this over to you first. Does Adam Gase get fired after this game?
You bet. I mean, I don't even want to comment on this because I feel bad when I say someone should get fired.
I know,
but he's terrible at his job. Not saying that he doesn't know football, but he's terrible at his job. And yes, he does get fired after this week. After he loses to Brett Rippon.
Yeah, let me just phrase it like this. Okay, is there anyone in this game? We talked about Melvin Gordon. I think you can still roll out Melvin Gordon, but again, I was just saying adjust your expectations. Noah Fant is probably the other one that we can say definitely start. Tags, are you saying that you can start Jerry Jeudy in this one as a flex option even with Brett Rippon?
Yeah, I would. I would say that. I think Brett Rippon has nothing to lose. He'll let it fly. Jerry Jeudy creates separation. Jeudy plays in the slot, which is whereas Brian Poole is probably the best cornerback on the Jets roster, which really sucks because that's obviously the matchup that Judy's going to have, considering I think he played 94% of his snaps in the slot last week. A lot of people were surprised by that. They thought KJ Hamler was going to be that guy, but it seems like they like Jeudy there. So I think Jeudy is flex play worthy. He's like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 borderline guy for me. So if you're torn between someone, I would be torn to play Jerry Jeudy or T.Y. Hilton this week. That just goes to show where I think T.Y. Hilton's at.
Sure.
I have them right in the same range. I would play Jerry Jeudy over someone like Corey Davis.
Okay. So that's for the Denver offense. Really no one else that you're looking at. KJ Hamler is someone down the line, but he needs Drew Lock. He needs this offense to be good in order for him to be involved in this offense. So let's go over to the Jets. Jacob, is there anyone on the Jets that you're saying you should be starting this week?
I actually do have someone, which is probably not good, because you never want to have a Jets player that you're trusting. But I think Braxton Berrios, if I was forced to choose a Jet, I think he's somebody you could trust in a deep, PPR league, or potentially if you're playing a showdown slate on Thursday. He has played 76% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks and does have a team-high 21% target share during that time. And he also has the best matchup against Denver's secondary. That is against their slot undrafted rookie, Essang Bassi, I think is how you say that name, but I really don't know.
Yeah. Sure. We'll go with sure.
Yeah, so like among qualified corners, only 2 have been targeted a higher per snap rate from the slot than him this year. And I think that if New York is going to have any success moving the ball through the air, it's probably going to be to him. So if I had to choose anybody, it would be him.
Yeah, I think that's the right call. If you had to choose someone, it would be Braxton Berrios. I'm not super excited about him as anything more than a wide receiver 4 in full PPR leagues, but I think he can return value for you. He's getting the targets. That just goes to show how valuable the slot receiver is in Adam Gase's offense, and we've always talked about that with Jamison Crowder. That was the whole reason why we liked Crowder and Landry way back in Miami. So yeah, I think Braxton Berrios is a fine deep league play, but otherwise this is just a game that I do not want to watch personally. But, of course, I'm still going to because it's football and it's on the TV. So, all right, guys, that is going to do it for today's show. Huge thank you to Jacob for coming on. Jacob, remind everyone where they can find and follow you on Twitter.
It's at JAGibbs_23. Still have that ugly underscore in there. Give me a follow. Just be tweeting out nerdy stats all day long, all week.
Hey, well, you're with the right audience for that. So, absolutely. Jacob, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it. Tags, any final words before we get out of here?
No, when you're stuck watching that game tomorrow night, just understand that it's better to have bad football than no football. So take it in for what it is. Yeah,
I saw this in someone posted this on Twitter earlier. Like in March, we would have been begging for this game. In April, we would have been begging for this game. So keep that in mind as you watch it. But again, it's football, so make sure that you tune in. All right, guys. Again, like I said, that's going to do it for today's show. For Jacob Gibbs and Mike Tagliere, I'm Kyle Yates. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get notified when we post videos in the future.